hear a faint familiar, long forgotten song, an ancient melody reminding me I can depend on love's sweet yellow voice to sing me awake. The nightmare is over, I am ultimately safe.
And have you ever found that you didn't want to ask a certain question because you didn't want to hear the answer? Have you ever gone through that?
Actually, I can't say that I have, because
Cool.
I know enough. It may have been when I was younger. I probably was afraid to ask questions. But now I ask whatever is important at the time, no matter
Right.
if it's a tough situation or not. I still ask the question, and sometimes I get answers I don't necessarily want or even want to deal with. But
Right.
it's I just try to trust it, and if it feels, I use my gut to determine if it's one that's going to empower me or one that's going to disempower me.
Hmm. So, Bill, what happens to you if, because I know part of your story involves a tremendous amount of fear.
Mhm.
Were you able, in those fearful moments, to get quiet and silent and listen, or was the fear just so overwhelming for you?
Well, it was a 13-hour trip, and people were screaming and everywhere. It was as loud and as crazy as you could ever imagine. People probably fighting their own fears and trying to to make it through it. And so for me, it took a long time. It probably took probably 9 to 10 hours before you know when I started basically asking a different question. Because whenever I would even start to pray, I would get started and I would stop because I was just so terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I remembered about the prayers I learned as a child, and I just started repeating them as a mantra. And I did it over and over, and I did it for hours, and then finally everything kind of faded away, and then you know several hours had gone by, and bam, we were safe. But
That's beautiful. And as I'm listening to you, it brings me to the idea that no matter what is happening in someone's life, that there is that eye of the storm, that quiet within the storm,
yeah.
that place inside of each and every one of us that we can access if we just sort of drop into it.
Yeah, and I know for me, like when I'm in a state where it's very intense, for me to just switch a switch and go into a silent state is not an option. So for me, how it works for me a lot of times, I just get really, really mad and get
Mm.
angry and get it out. And once
Mhm.
I get that out, then I can step back, and now I can start doing it, because I couldn't have jumped straight into that silent state without getting really angry,
Got it.
and for me it worked. So
Because what that tells me is that you are very present to the emotion that's right there, right
right,
now, rather than trying to push away the anger and get rid of
right.
the anger. You're allowing yourself to just sort of be with it, and then you can drop underneath it. That's awesome. Congratulations. That's great. So, what words of wisdom would you have for someone who is, I don't know, maybe struggling in life? People who are going to read this book. What words of wisdom would you have for them?
Well, I think that it's really important to find a way, a process, a procedure. I learned this on my own through trial and error. Is to really to get silent,
Mm.
and to really to try to get still. And if you can't, if you are having trouble, a lot of times, even when I'm doing all this stuff, it doesn't work. I'll put on music, or I'll put on different kinds of music. I'll put on whatever it can take, just to make my mind be quiet. And I would encourage anybody out there that is struggling with anything, is to be quiet, get quiet, and then really ask a different question, like, how can this you know help me become a better person? you know what can I do to serve? And just ask a different question,
Yep.
instead of saying, why me, this
Yep.
always happens to me.
Yep.
If you ask a lousy question, you're gonna get a lousy answer.
Yeah, and it usually will keep you stuck right where you're at.
Stuck right where you're at.
Yeah. Bill, I am so glad.
I have answered in silence. I listen at length to the calling of my heart, unwavering.